This morning is a very special session to me. I was in a conference in Nashville, Tennessee, and a gentleman from California got up to speak. And after it was over, my jaw dropped. Everyone in the room's jaw dropped. And I was so amazed by the message that this man had to give. And I thought, I'll never be able to get to him. And indeed, I could not get to him. He was in a sea of people. And I thought, how do I get to this guy? And I really want to get his information because I want to get him to my family at CRS. But I just can't get to him. So I found the best-looking woman in the room who was indeed his wife. Because the guy's a good-looking guy, and I knew his glory. I was like, that's got to be his wife. So I found his wife, and I was like, I know he's so busy right now, but could you get my information? I would love to hook him up with my family here. And, of course, she followed through, and before I knew it, we were in contact together, and then we started building a friendship. The interesting thing about Travis, he is a Generation Y strategist. He just doesn't do it for corporations. He also does it for realtor organizations. In fact, several associations of realtors have brought him in to help future cast what they can be doing as association and realtors to be ready for this next hot buying demographic. So Travis and I have a lot in common because we're close to the same age range, but we also have another wonderful thing in common. This year, Travis also became an adoptive father. And it totally makes you a different person, as you know, when you go through this process. So I need you to understand that this is Travis's first time in front of our CRS family. And I know how we hug from the audience. One of the things that we will be doing, because Travis, if we have time, and only if we have time, Travis has agreed, he rarely does this, to open for Q&A. His sessions do create a lot of questions. If we have time, I will be coming up afterwards. We will be having a Q&A. Be thinking of your questions during, and when we do open for Q&A, there are mics on each side if we get to that point. We will not be taking questions from out here because obviously for videotaping purposes and video purposes and also the room, we want people to be able to hear, okay? So I need you to give a warm CRS welcome to Mr. Travis Robertson.
Thank you guys so much. I truly, truly appreciate being here. And would you guys like to meet my son real quick? Because he's actually here. So Brock, come on up for a second. This is Brock. He's 11 years old, soon to be 12, I think, in 2 weeks. And it's funny because his birthday is February 3rd, my wife's is February 4th, and my brother's is February 5th. So it's like the most expensive time of the year for me. So it's, but here's kind of the overview for today. And real quick, how many are still a little tired? Because it's 8:15 in the morning, and I thought I was speaking at 9. Then I found out it was 8:15. I'm like, I'm not up by 8:15. This is just not good. So here's what I want you to do. For just a quick second, everybody stand up for just a quick second. I promise no calisthenics, no jumping jacks if you're a little worried. And here's what happened. The other day I was on Twitter, and I was monitoring the hashtag for this event. And it just so turns out that there was a conversation happening between Lee Brown and Brian Copeland, and it turns out that today is National Hugging Day. I know, right? And you would think a millennial invented this because we're all kind of touchy-feely. But it turns out it was actually a Gen Xer, and I did the research on this. Turns out it was a Gen Xer who invented it, and I thought about it, and I was like, you know what? That actually kind of makes sense, because they weren't hugged enough as kids. They're kind of cranky. You know, they were latchkey kids. Their parents weren't around. So they needed a hug, so they created a day where they could get a hug. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to turn to somebody next to you and just give them a big hug. None of that side hug stuff. None of that, like, just hug it out. National Hugging Day. All right, no groping either. I see some of you getting a little frisky out there. We don't need any sexual harassment claims right now, you know, keep it clean. And thank you to the sound guys in the back for getting the Austin Powers theme going, because they had no idea I was doing this. So that was spot on timing. Thank you guys. All right, so let me just kind of do this. I want to tell you a little bit about myself, because a lot of you don't know who I am. Some of you have seen me speak before, and you're a little freaked out because I'm in a suit. And I never wear suits before. This is the only tie that I own. So I never wear suits, but I realized, I'm like, this is CRS. I got to step up my dress code a little bit, because you guys are the best of the best, and I have to bring my A game. And so I got a suit, and I also wanted to compete with Brian for best dressed at CRS. And so I'm hoping that I'm in the running, because he's got the bow tie and everything, so he always looks good. But how many of you have heard one of the webinars that I've done for CRS before? I've done one on cloud computing, one on actually what we're talking about today, and also one on Google Plus about a month and a half ago. Anybody here? You guys need to get on the webinars. Come on. Like, these are such great training tools. Oh, Jackie. Hi, Jackie. So here's what I want to do. I want to just give you a brief overview of who I am and why I'm up here. Brian mentioned that I'm a generational consultant, and that is part of what I do. I'm also a business coach and a business strategist. So I help people and organizations grow their business, prepare for what's coming down the pike. How do you prepare yourself, your business, your people, set goals, achieve goals, create strategies, marketing strategies, business development, all sorts of things. And my background is really in technology. I spent about 12 years in the technology field, starting companies, running companies, and over that period of time, I realized that I love people, I love technology, but I'm not built for the technology world. I like people too much. I'm not that geek in the corner that just sits on a computer all day long. I actually like talking with people and working with people. So I made this shift into more of a consulting, coaching arena. And so that's who I am, that's what I do. I'm not a CRS, I'm not even a realtor. Most of my clients are in the real estate industry, but I am not a realtor. So that always gets asked is, how long have you been a CRS? I've never been a CRS. So just a brief overview of who I am. Now, I want to talk with you today about we're going to breeze through this. We got a lot to cover today. And so here's what I want to do is I want to kind of preview what we're going to talk about. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to spend the first part of our time talking about who the millennials are, this Gen Y group, who they are, how we classify them, why you should care about what they want. Then what we're going to do is we're going to look at 5 characteristic traits of this generation. And it doesn't mean that everybody looks, thinks, acts, and feels the same way. It just means that they have shared cultural experiences that guide what they're looking for in real estate. Because right now, they are going to change the real estate industry, and they're actually already starting to do that. And I've got the stats to back that up. Then what we're going to talk about is we're going to do a little bit of talk about technology and how you can start to prepare your business for this generation, and why it's not just this generation that you're ultimately preparing for. And then, assuming we have time at the end, I love Q&A. I love taking questions from the audience. So if we have time and we can do that, Brian asked me, and we thought it'd be a great idea if we did some Q&A at the end. So do be getting your questions ready to go. So with that, let me just get the little clicker out. I don't have a lot of slides, by the way, so we're just going to breeze through a couple things. This is my Twitter handle, so if you're on Twitter, this is the hashtag for the event, and this is my Twitter handle. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Google+, but I would love for you to put any comments out there, anything that you say, that you think I say that's absolutely brilliant and makes unicorns dance in your head, tweet it out there. And if you think I'm an absolute idiot, put that out there too. I have really thick skin. I've heard it all before. You're not going to offend me. I want to know what you guys are thinking, and I will respond to every single tweet. So please do put it out there. Now, I did tell you about our son, Brock. It's been a big year for us. This is him right here. And I do want to show you something because we just recently moved out of Nashville. We born and raised in LA, moved to Nashville for about 5 years. And then we recently moved back to Newport Beach, California. And we live at the beach, and so this was us hanging out at the beach the other day. And what we've had to figure out is how do we make use of our space? Because when you live at the beach and you live a block from the beach, you tend to get small spaces. And what I want to do is I want to give you guys a tip, because this is our living room. And what I want you to notice is not the blue couch, because there's some interior decorators who are cringing right now and going, blue couch? It's at the beach. It's perfectly acceptable. What I want you to notice is in front... Yeah, some of you are living at the beach going, oh, I just have a blue couch. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to notice in front of the couch is this nice leather stool or kind of footrest type of thing. But when you live at the beach, you have to figure out ways to get creative with space. And because we're going to be talking about smaller homes, I just want to start with a tip. This also doubles as a really wonderful bed for our son. And what's funny is I tweeted this out, and what happened was when we first got him and he moved in with us, we were so excited, and he climbed into it, because kids try and hide everywhere, so he was trying to hide in there, and I walked out before he was able to get it closed. And I was like, oh gosh, I got to take a picture of that. So I took a picture of it, and I tweeted our son trying out his new bed. We're good parents, right? So that's what I put on Twitter. And the responses I got back, I mean, some of you people are sick, because it was like, lock it, then you're good parents. I was like, and other people are like, where do I get one? Does it have a lock? So, joys of being a parent. Kids are fun, I'm sorry. It's great. So anyway, let me tell you kind of about this generation. Who are the millennials? Why do we care? The millennials are those born between about 1977 and 1995. 1977, 1995. That means that this year they're turning between the ages of 17 and 35 years of age. 17 and 35 years of age. And it's really easy when we talk about a big group of people, a generational group of people, to think of them as this nameless, faceless mass. And I really, really don't want you to think of them as a nameless, faceless mass. I want you to do an exercise with me, and I want you to start thinking about somebody that you know between the ages of 17 and 35. And in order to do this, here's a really quick way of doing it. If you're part of the World War II or silent generation, these are primarily your grandkids. These are your grandkids that we're talking about. So get your grandkids in your mind. If you're a baby boomer, they're primarily your kids. Especially if you're in the younger section of the baby boomer population, these are primarily your kids. And if you're a Gen Xer, what I want you to think about is that snotty-nosed, entitled kid in the office who feels like they should be CEO in about 3 weeks. That's who we're talking about here. And if you're a millennial, I want you to either think about yourself or think about your friends. Sometimes it's easier to think about other people. Sometimes it's easier to run it through the filter of yourself. But these are things that I want you to do. And every time I ask people to do this, it's fun, because afterwards somebody inevitably will come up to me and they'll say, thank you so much for your presentation. I'll say, well, thank you. I really appreciate it. And they go, no, thank you, because I finally understand my kids now. It's like, well, I'm not a family therapist, but I'm glad it helped. Did you get anything from a business perspective out of this? Because that's really what the goal of this is to understand this from a business perspective. And so why do we care about this generation? Why do we care what they want? Well, let me put some perspective on this for you. This is a generation that baby boomers were 80 million in size at their peak. 80 million people in the baby boomer generation at that maximum. Right now, they're at about 77, 78 million and shrinking. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but mortality rates are starting to hit in for them. Following the baby boomers were Gen X. And Gen X, at their peak, are 40 million in size. Half the size of baby boomers. It's why we're still talking about baby boomers, and why we've been talking about baby boomers for so many years. They've driven our economy. They've controlled our wealth. They've controlled everything that we do in industry and business, just across the platform, everything. Now, here come millennials, and everybody's talking about them, but we go, why? Well, they're 83 million in size, and they're still growing because of immigration and some other factors. 83 million in size. That means they are now the largest generation in U.S. history, possibly world history. And on top of that, they're primarily the kids of the baby boomers. And so when we talk about wealth transfer, who's in line to get the majority of the wealth that passes from the baby boomers into the next generation? Millennials. In fact, the majority is going to skip right over the Gen Xers and land squarely in the lap of the millennials. Now, some of you are breaking into a cold sweat because you're like, they still live in my basement. I know, right? They're still living at home, and you're like, they can't run their own lives. And they're going to control our economy? Yes. So, and here's where it starts to get even creepier. They already make up 34% of the U.S. workforce, which makes them the largest living generation in the U.S. workforce today. In 2 years, that number is expected to grow to 50% of the U.S. workforce. In about 5 to 10 years, 60 to 65% of the U.S. workforce. That's why we care about this generation right now. And here's where it gets even, and people always go, yes, yeah, okay, that's great. 5 years down the road, 2 years down the road, but are they buying houses right now? In 2010, they purchased 41% of all homes sold in the U.S. And everybody goes, yeah, but we had the first-time homebuyer tax credit. That was an anomaly. In 2011, according to the NAR, they purchased 31% of all homes sold in the U.S. They had the tightest lending restrictions. They had the tightest credit restrictions. They had no incentive whatsoever to go out and buy a home, and yet they still bought a third of all the homes sold in the U.S., and that number is only going to continue to grow. The reason it was down so far this last year is because so many pushed forward their plans in 2010. That number is only going to continue to grow. This is a generation that is very, very important to the future of this industry and of your business. So when we talk about them, how do we relate to them? How do we understand them? How do we understand the impact that they're going to have on this industry? The first thing we have to do is understand that there are 5 traits that we're going to talk about this generation. The first 4 deal with emotional triggers. Emotional triggers for them, because when you buy a house, we all know this. Buying a house is not a logical decision. I'm sorry, if anybody thinks it is, it's not. Every study that has been done on any purchase decision, even down to the earbuds that you buy for your phone, it is an emotional decision that you make that you back up with logic. And so what we have to understand is that if this is an emotional decision, what are the triggers, what are the traits of this generation that are triggering their emotional connection to a particular house or a particular property? And there's 4 that we're going to talk about. The 5th trait is a communicative trait. It's how we communicate with each other. It's how we communicate with you. It's how we communicate with the world around us. So we're going to deal with the first 4, which are the emotional traits, and then we're going to deal with the communicative trait at the very end. So the 4 emotional triggers, the first one is this is a generation that is very, very focused on work-life balance. Work-life balance. Why? Well, who were their parents? We already established this. Their parents were the baby boomer generation. Who were the baby boomers? The hardest working, most successful generation in history is measured by money. Extremely successful, extremely hardworking, and the urban or suburban sprawl started before the baby boomers, but the baby boomers took it and made it extremely big and pretty. They took the suburban expansion and they made bigger houses on bigger lots with shiny cars in the driveway, and everything was about those status symbols, big trips, nice trips. And so they showed their success by the trappings of life. Whether it was right or it was wrong, that's what they did. And what happened was the idea was we'll get to 55, and at 55 we'll retire with our pension, our IRAs, our 401ks. We'll get the gold watch, buy the RV, and drive around into the sunset, and that'll be our life, right? And at the time, it made sense because people's mortality rates people were dying at a much younger age when they were starting out in the world. Making it to 65 was a miracle. Now, all of a sudden, life expectancy is up in the late 70s, early 80s. 55 now becomes kind of an odd number. And so now what they're doing is they're saying, well, at 55, I'll retire from this job that I really actually hate. Because they do. And I'll go and I'll find something that I love to do for the last part of this, for the last part of my life. And our excuse me, thankfully I brought water up here. So our generation is hearing this and we're going, wait a minute, why do I have to divorce what I love from what I do to make money? Why do they have to be 2 separate things? Why can't I find something that I love to do, make money at it, and work past 55? Why do I have to be done by 55, especially if I'm doing what I love? Why not just extend the time frame that I have to do these things? And on top of that, I don't necessarily want to recreate the same lifestyle for my family that I had growing up. We're grateful for it. We appreciate it. Some of us still appreciate it because we're still living with you. I get to make fun of my own generation, so it's great. So here's the thing, but at the same time, what have they found? Not only were both parents working, and there was a rise in dual incomes under the baby boomers, there was a rise in overall wealth under the baby boomers, but there was also a rise in one other statistic, drastically, divorce. Baby boomers have gotten divorced at a much, much faster rate than any other generation. And they've done studies to find out from millennials what impact this has had on them as a group. And so they've studied them, and here's what they've found out, is they asked him, one of the questions they asked him was, what do you think the number one factor was in contributing to the divorce of your parents? Do you want to know what came back as number one? The size of the house. It shocked even the people conducting the study, and so they went back and they said, why on earth would you say the size of the house? And they said, because what it did is it allowed everybody in our family to isolate and separate themselves into different corners of the houses, which broke down communication, which meant that when they had the financial problems, when they had the marital problems, when they had the disagreements, nobody was talking, nobody was working out any problems. They were all just in different rooms of the same house, and we don't want to create that same lifestyle for our family. We want a smaller house. We want the family to be more tightly knit, more closely put together, so that we can't separate and isolate ourselves as a family unit. On top of that, they don't want to work the 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 hours a week. And so what they're finding is that even if they did want the big houses on the big lots, they couldn't afford them. They're going to be saddled with different burdens, with higher taxes, look, yes, they're living in your basement right now, but they're also going to be paying your Medicare, Medicaid, Medi-Cal bills when things happen in the next 20 years. We all know this. All of these things are going to be put on the shoulders of this generation. This is not going to be a generation that has necessarily the same access to wealth that the baby boomers did. It's going to impact the properties and what they can ultimately afford and what they even want. So be keeping this in mind as you're looking at properties and you're showing properties and you're positioning your own business as what sort of expert do you want to be? Are you going to be the big lot, big house expert, or do you maybe need to start repositioning yourself a little bit differently? Second trait, they're very, very big on collaboration. This is a generation that loves to collaborate with each other. They love to get in groups and do things. Why? And some of us were talking about this at lunch yesterday. Is because we didn't keep score. We got into Little League, we got into soccer, we got into baseball, and the first thing they told us is there's no winners, there's no losers. If you lose, it hurts your feelings, it hurts your self-esteem, and it's all about self-esteem. We don't grade you don't get an F. And it's certainly not going to be a red F. It'll be in purple ink, because it's more soothing psychologically. And everybody's going to get a trophy. If you show up, you get a trophy. So you could be in a swimming competition. You could finish in last place, 26th place. You come in 26th place, and your parents are like, Johnny, we are so proud of you. You're our championship swimmer. And Johnny's like, I was in last place. And they're like, I know, but last time you drowned. And the lifeguard, he had to jump in and save you. And he gave you CPR. At least this time you didn't drown and you made it all the way across the pool. We're going to take this 26th place trophy and we're going to put it right up next to the ribbon that the lifeguard gave you for bravery. Because we get trophies and ribbons for everything. And when we finished our homework or finished our schoolwork, the idea was turn around and help somebody else. Always about collaborating, always about helping other people. And it's fun talking with my coaching clients about this that are real estate agents, because I always say, be prepared for this. If you've not worked with millennials before, and those that have always go, oh my gosh, this is so true. So here's what happens. The first showing, let's say you're working with a millennial couple. The first showing, they show up by themselves. It's wonderful. You have this great experience. They come with all their paperwork because they've done all this research online. And so they know all the housings, they know all the listings. They know everything that they think that they should know. And they show up and they've got all this ready to go. And you take them around to 75 houses because they have to see and touch everything. And so you take them around and they go, oh, this has just been a wonderful experience. Thank you so much. Let us think about it. We'll process with it. Then they call you back and they go, you know what, there's a few houses we'd like to see again. And you say, great, I'll meet you over at one of the properties. And you get there early because you're just kind of, you're a good real estate agent. So you get there early and you're waiting for them. And all of a sudden you see this train of cars pull up. This is kind of odd. Is the president here? And so all of a sudden out comes the couple, along with 4 sets of parents, because they're from divorced families, so all the parents have to come along. I'm telling you, it's true. And all the brothers and sisters and the best friends on both sides, everybody has to have a say in this house. And you start realizing that I'm not selling a house to a millennial couple, I'm selling a house to a community. And everybody has to have a say, and they value their opinion. And you start to realize that you're not just having to convince them, you're having to tell the parents why it's a good house for their kids. You're having to tell their friends why it's a good house for their friends. All of these things become important to them. And so you want to understand that the idea of housing where you drive into your garage, the garage door closes, and you've got this walled off, fenced off garden is gone. They don't want that. They want to know their neighbors. They want to have these shared gathering spaces. They want to be a part of a community. We invented social networking. I think people oftentimes forget that, and they go, yeah, but social networking allows you to be nameless, faceless people. No, it doesn't. It allows us to make our offline friendships richer by bringing them online. That's how we perceive it. That's how we use these things, because we're very much community-driven. We want to know about our friends. We want to know about people. And we want to be involved with people in these shared gathering spaces, local bars, pubs, restaurants, things within walking distance, all these things. If you know where these things are when you're showing a house, tell them and or show them. Say, by the way, did you know there's a great little community center? This neighborhood, what they do is every Friday they do a barbecue. They do a big grill out in the street where all the neighbors can come in. These are selling points to them. These are things that they want to know about. So be aware of how they can live in community within these neighborhoods. Third trait. And by the way, these next 2 traits have been politicized, and I'm not making a political statement. I have my own beliefs on them, but that's not what we're talking about. I just want you to be aware of them because of the messaging that they've received. So whether you're on the right or the left, it doesn't matter. Just know that these things are. Third trait. This is a very multicultural generation. Multicultural generation, meaning that they're very sensitive to other races, cultures, creeds, ethnicities, religions, and here's why. Primarily the kids of the baby boomers, right? We established that. Who were the baby boomers and what happened during the baby boomer population? White flight, twice. It used to be that they were in the urban centers. And crime started to get bad, schooling started to get bad, and they started to realize that they could provide a different quality of life for their kids out in the suburban areas. So white middle-class Americans fled the inner cities for the suburban areas, for better schooling and for better lifestyle quality for their kids. It wasn't a racist thing, it was just what it was. And it happened, there were 2 major waves of this during the baby boomer population. What that did, though, to the inner cities is it tanked the tax revenue because the tax revenue went outside to the suburbs. So the schools that were already struggling, the inner cities that were already struggling, lost a tremendous amount of money. Schools started closing. Schools became overcrowded in the inner cities. So a lot of cities, including where I grew up in LA, implemented a policy called forced busing, where they would take inner city schools and bus them out to these suburban areas, and all of a sudden, what was a very monochromatic situation became a very culturally diverse situation, and it also became a powder keg. So they started implementing diversity training, multicultural training, ethnicity training, sensitivity training, so that everybody would be aware of what other people thought, what these other races, religions, creeds, whatever it was. Everybody became much more tolerant and understanding of what people's different backgrounds were. And what we found through study after study is that this is the generation beyond any other generation that is the most culturally diverse and sensitive generation to people who look, think, act, feel, and believe differently than them. They're much more open-minded about this stuff. And when you look at it and you go, okay, well, what does this mean to housing? Here's what I want you to do. Get that person back in your mind that's between the ages of 17 and 35, or right around there. Now think about their friends. Do their friends look, think, act, and feel the same way they do? Chances are no. Chances are they have friends that are very, very diverse, which a lot of parents are shocked to even realize. They go, oh my gosh, I never even realized that until you said it. But yeah, my kids' friends are from all sorts of different socioeconomic backgrounds, all sorts of racial backgrounds, all sorts of religious backgrounds. And I never even thought about it before. And what they've done is they've surrounded themselves with these people, and they like it. And so when they're looking for a community, they go, you know what, I appreciate the suburbs, but I'm sorry, it's a little monochromatic. Everybody has the same house. Everybody drives the same car. Everybody looks the same. Everybody thinks the same. Everybody talks the same. And I want something with more energy, more buzz, more vibrance, more livelihood. And you find that where there's more cultural diversity, there's more ethnicities, there's more food diversity. I mean, everything is more diverse when there's more different, like all sorts of different people. Nobody ever drives out into the suburbs, climbs out of the car and goes, wow, baby, can you feel the energy? This place is on fire. No, they're called bedroom communities for a reason. You know? We call them bedroom communities because they're sleepy. Nothing happens in a bedroom community except you sleep. And so what they're looking at and they're going, I want more energy, I want more vibrance out of my lifestyle. So be looking for places that are more culturally diverse, that still provide good schooling, and that you're finding a lot more of these places popping up. We're going to talk about them in just a second. Fourth trait, very, very eco-sensitive generation. Very eco-sensitive generation. And what this means is that they were raised with messaging about global warming, global climate change. SUVs are bad, cars are bad, local is great, you know, big box stores are bad, public transportation, light rail is good, walking is good, riding your bike is good. Beware of your carbon footprint. All of these messages have made them much more sensitive to what they're buying and what sort of impact they're having on the environment and the world around them. Whether you agree or disagree with the basic premise doesn't matter. They've polled both on the right and the left of the millennial generation, conservative and liberal. All of them poll more eco-sensitive, even if they're more on the conservative side. They're much more eco-sensitive. This is a trait that you're going to find in a lot of them, is they want to know, where's the public transportation? What sort of public transportation is even available? What can I walk to? Can I ride my bike to different places? And here's what NAR found. They published a study or the results of a survey that they did back in, I think it was September, October, somewhere around that time frame. And they asked millennials, what's more important to you, the size of the house you live in or your commute time? Like 68%, which in my mind is all of them. But the majority of them said, I would rather live in a smaller place on a smaller lot and have a shorter commute time than have a longer commute time and live on a big house with a big lot. I want a shorter commute time. So one of the first questions you ought to ask is, where do you work? Where do you work? Because if you're showing them houses that are 45 minutes from work and you have options to reduce the amount of house that they're going to buy, their budget may increase slightly, and you want to, again, it depends on where you're located, it depends on the market you're working, but what you want to be aware of is that you're not pushing them off so far away from where they work that they all of a sudden go, I don't like living here. This isn't really fitting for me. I don't know why. Because again, they can't necessarily tell you all of these 4 traits. You're going to have to pick up on some verbal cues that they give you. They may go, oh, gosh, this seems kind of far from work. Verbal cue. Boy, this seems like a lot of upkeep. Verbal cue. You want to know what they're saying and what is behind it, and it's very likely one of these 4 traits that are behind it. Now, if you're smart and you're paying attention and we're following along, what this is pointing towards is more like the urban centers, the urban cores, right? You're starting to go, wow, this is kind of a very much urbanized lifestyle. Now, here's the problem. There's another group of people that are saying they want the exact same things. Baby boomers. Baby boomers are now looking at those big 3,000 square foot houses that they're trying to sell to their kids who they don't want them. And they're looking at these big houses with the big lots and going, we don't want the upkeep on these things anymore. We don't want the burden of these things anymore. We want out from them. And what they've done is they've done studies, and they have baby boomers have roughly on average 1 to 2 more transactions that they plan to do in the rest of their life. 1 to 2 more transactions. The majority of them want a more urbanized lifestyle. So by positioning yourself for millennials, what you're actually also doing is positioning yourself for the next 1 or 2 transactions that the baby boomers are going to do. This isn't just about millennials, but it is about how millennials are changing what people want. And now you're positioned for the 2 largest generations who are both vying for the same similar lifestyle. That's a pretty darn good place to be, if you ask me. And here's what it's also doing to millennials. Because the baby boomers have the wealth and they're flooding the urban areas, it's driving the price up, which is pushing the millennials out to the suburban areas where they don't want to be. Builders are getting smart, and they're going, rather than build further and further out, let's retrofit back in and create multi-use communities, work, live, play style communities, where people can walk to work, where people can ride their bikes to different shops, different restaurants, different things. And they're creating a different type of lifestyle in these suburban areas that is more urbanized. And they're doing this for 2 reasons. One is to provide a place for the millennials who can no longer afford the urban centers. The second is to keep the baby boomers from moving to the urban centers. Why do they want to keep the baby boomers from moving to the urban centers? The wealth goes with them. The tax dollars go with them. The revenue goes with them. And so what they're doing is they're saying, hey, before you look at the urban centers, we've got the lifestyle you're looking for, plus proximity to your grandkids because your kids can't afford to live in the urban areas. And so baby boomers are starting to look at it going, we don't really necessarily want to leave the suburbs, but we don't want the 3,000 square foot house on the big lot. So this is a nice win-win for us. And millennials are going, well, it gives us the majority of what we want at a price we can afford. This is a win-win for us. So this retrofitting of the suburbs, this urbanization of the suburbs is a trend that you're starting to see more and more. And the National Association of Home Builders has even recognized it and said we are building smaller houses, and our big goal for the next 10 years or so is to retrofit what we've already built out. This is where things are heading. What you need to start doing is figuring out, how can I position myself, my business, as a lifestyle expert? Not as a McMansion expert, not as if you're luxury, you're luxury. That's a different market. We're not talking about luxury right now, by the way. Some of the luxury people are like, this doesn't apply. It will eventually, but right now it doesn't, and I'll admit that. But for the majority of people, the majority of transactions happen in that middle market. And so this is where that middle market is going. You've got the baby boomer generation and you've got the millennial generation, the 2 largest generations, who together dwarf Gen X, all vying for a very, very similar type of lifestyle. That's where I want to position my business if I'm a realtor. 5th trait, this is the communicative trait. This is not an emotional trigger. This is just how we deal with the world around us. We are extremely technologically dependent. A colleague of mine named Jason Dorsey, I think, says it best. He says, we're not technologically savvy. We don't know how the technology works. We just depend on it to be there and to work. We're not savvy, we don't know what it does, but we depend on it. And because we depend on it, because it's become such an integral part of how we communicate with the world, it becomes an integral part of how we as business owners have to communicate with the world around us and have to communicate with them. Our clients drive how we must communicate, not vice versa. We communicate how they need to be communicated to. We don't expect them to communicate how we're comfortable. It's a key point, and I think too many people are waiting for the millennials to quote-unquote get it. And all along they're going, we're waiting for you to realize this isn't going away. Technology is no longer optional. Technology is a necessity for business. And there's 3 ways you can kind of start integrating technology into your business and becoming more empowered with technology and create something that you, when it comes to technology, that you can say, you know what, I'm good enough at technology. You don't need to be better than us, by the way. You just need to make some efforts. And so there's 3 things I want you to keep in mind when using technology, using social media, and all of these different things. Number 1 is go where they are and provide real value. Go where they are and provide real value. Too many people hear the word social media, they forget that the word social precedes the word media, and they just think of it as an extension of radio, TV, bus bench ads, yellow pages, all that stuff. And the reality is we don't even know what a yellow pages is. It's that big yellow thing that they keep dropping off on our doorstep and there's no unsubscribe button on it. You know, I mean, we can't, how do you get it to stop? It's like physical spam. And it's killing trees, and we're eco-sensitive, so we cry when we see it. We're like, there's 75 trees died to make this. We work so differently. So you've got to go where we are, and you've got to engage with us by providing real value. How do you do that? Where do we go? 88% of us start our search online. You're no longer the gatekeepers to the information. We have access to listings. We have access to neighborhood data. We have access to all of this information. And too many realtors that I talk to are frustrated by that fact. Here's what you are, and here's what we want you to be. Not the gatekeepers to the information. We want you to be the interpreters of the information. Raw data is so easy to come by. Understanding and interpreting it, we can't do. That's what your experience provides us that we don't have. It provides us the understanding of what we're looking at, what we're seeing. That's what we need you to be. So when you go to sites like Trulia, sites like Zillow, sites like Facebook, sites like Twitter, Active Rain, bestplaces.net, all these different sites, what you want to do is you want to get on there and please, please, please do not provide talking points. Because we'll ask you questions and we don't even know the right questions to ask. So we ask questions that are dumb, like, is now a good time to buy? And our dumb question is met with dumb responses like, yes, now is a great time to buy. And I'm not saying you guys do it, but I'm saying a lot of people do it. And the reality is you don't know that. It's dependent on our situation. It's dependent on who we are. It's depending on the market. And what you need to be able to do, and every time I mention Zillow, people freak out. And Zillow just announced some incredible changes that I know some of the other sessions have talked about, so I'm not going to go into it, but how they're integrating Facebook and social media, it's going to be huge if you start capitalizing on it. It's also the #1 site for searching for homes. It's like twice the size of Trulia. It's a very, very important social network. But every time I bring up Zillow, agents always get mad because they're like, I hate Zillow. Everybody gets on there and they just rip agents apart. And I go, you know what? Because they give talking points. So here's what I want you to do. There's a lot of mud being slung on Zillow. I get it. But I want you to go there and I want you to shine like a diamond in the crap. Let it resonate, because you'll get it. And by the way, that just cost me $1 because we have this thing called the ugly jar, which is like our swear jar at home. And crap is one of the words you're not allowed to say. So that's 2 words. So that's how important this is I'm willing to pay $2 to tell you that this is, please shine like a diamond in the crap, because when you do that, I have a friend who did $2 million, $3. Good, I'm glad you're all keeping score. And I'm sure my son over there is too. He's like, so here's the thing. It all goes to charity, so it's for a good cause. So here's the thing, is that when you do that, I have a friend who made $2 million off of one question he answered on Zillow in 2010. Ended up connecting up with an investor. And that investor is continuing to give him business because of one question, because he went on there and he shined like a diamond in the junk. So that's the importance of this, is that you can do it if you're strategic about it. Don't be the guy who goes to the networking event and pulls out the business card and shakes hands. Don't be that person. When you get on Twitter, when you get on Facebook, don't just push your messaging at us. Engage with us. These are relational platforms. How many of you seen Meet the Fockers? Yeah, some of you don't want to admit it. It's a great movie, all right? You need to see Meet the Fockers. They have this thing like, Greg, this is our circle of trust. You know, remember the circle of trust? Greg, this is our circle of trust. And we're watching you. I'm watching you, Greg. And here's the thing. They are watching you. They have a circle of trust. If they let you into that circle of trust and you just start saying, come to my open house, come to my listing, here's my new showing, here's my new this, here's my new that, they will cut you out of that circle of trust and you will never get back in. Once you're out, they have the tools and the resources and the desire to exercise the control to cut you out of their circle of trust. And once you're out, you will never get back in. Provide real value. Second thing I want you to do with technology, please take control of your own web marketing. I know there are a lot of brokers who provide websites. And I'm not bashing brokers here. Brokers are good people who are doing a great service, and they want to help you get up and running with technology. So they say, tell you what, we'll provide you with a website. The problem with that is that you get something like travisrobertson.mybroker.com or mybroker.com/travisrobertson. A couple things wrong with that. Number one, you will never rank on any search engine when you're off of your company website. You'll never rank. Second thing wrong with that, how many brokers change, or how many agents change brokers over the course of a career? Almost all of them. Almost all of them will at some point in their career change brokers. The problem is if the core of your web marketing, which is your website, is controlled by your broker, how big is your problem when you go to move to a new broker? Huge. Your branding, your messaging, your web marketing, everything ought to be controlled by you. You ought to own that. You ought to be good with it. You ought to be confident with it. And CRS is one of the best organizations in the industry at providing you the tools, the training, the resources that you need to be confident to take control of your own web marketing. This isn't optional. What I'm telling you is not optional, because it will come to a point when they hit your website and they go, why didn't I just go to the main website? If all they're doing is just putting up a basic page off of their broker website, they're not very technologically savvy. They don't know what they're doing. They must not be that good. They must not be, because they can't afford to pay for a website. Websites are cheap nowadays. You just have to get trained on how to do it, and you can pay somebody to have you set it up. It's not that difficult. It's not even that expensive anymore. This isn't and shouldn't be optional. But too many people are still relying on their brokers for the main core of their online presence, and it is dangerous to the future of your business, especially in a more technologically savvy world. Third thing I want you to do is integrate technology into your business and provide unique experiences. Let me give you an example. I believe that every realtor ought to have 3 iPads. Some of you are like, I don't even have one. 3 iPads. Here's why. Number one, buy the cheapest one you can find and load it up with games. So that when you're on a showing, here you go, snotty-nosed little kids. Keep yourself entertained. I need to talk to mom and dad. So they're fun, and mom and dad are so thrilled because they're like, we've never heard them this quiet before. This is so wonderful, thank you. Can we go on a listing appointment tomorrow? Load it up with games, give it to the kids. Number 2, for yourself. This is your business iPad. This is what you're working with. This has got your email, your contracts, your document signing stuff. Everything that you need to conduct your business is on this iPad. It's locked down, it's secured, it is your laptop on the road. It's everything you need to conduct business, because the last thing you want to say to a millennial client, and even more technologically savvy clients, is, I'll get you that when we get back to the office. That should never come out of your mouth in today's world. You have the capacity to go, oh, you need that information? Let me get that pulled up for you. It's in your inbox. We live in a world of instant gratification where we expect it to happen now. If you tell us, wait till we get back to the office, we're all of a sudden thinking, this person doesn't get me. This person doesn't understand my own needs. This person doesn't even understand the world we live in. That's iPad number 2. iPad number 3 is for the parents. Why? Number 1, I don't want them using my business iPad. I don't want them seeing my contracts. I don't want them running the risk of seeing client information. They've entrusted me with that. I want to respect their trust and privacy. But we also know that there are certain questions that you legally cannot answer when they ask them. You can't say, if they say, well, tell me, what are the demographics of this neighborhood? Or tell me what this is. You can't legally answer that. Here's the iPad. Why don't you Google it? And then let's talk about what you find. Now, their kids are entertained, they're informed, your clients are protected, you've got your business workstation there, and it costs you can do it for less than $1,000. It's such a nominal investment, but it will change the experience that your clients have, because nobody else is doing that. And all of a sudden, they're going to go, this person gets it. This person understands the world we live in and the businesses we live in and how the world works. I had a friend of mine who bought a house. It was a second house, but he was out of the market for a number of years, and so during the first-time homebuyer tax credit, he decided to get back into the market, bought a second house, worked with a real estate agent that he used for the first transaction. It was a family friend of ours, and used her for the first transaction. This was about 2001, 2002. So the technology was in a very, very different stage. This time, he had all the resources and tools and technology that we basically have today. And he and his wife were doing a tremendous amount of research. And I asked him, I said, how's the home buying process going? He said, this has been the most frustrating experience of my life. I said, why? And he goes, we're doing all of her research for her. We're telling her when things are coming on the market. We're telling her what the open houses are. We're telling her all of these things. And we just feel like she's the key to open the door to get us inside. We just feel like all she's there for is to take her 6% or 3% and open the door so we can get in. And we're doing all the legwork for her. We're doing all of her research for her. And we will never use her again because we shouldn't have to do all of this. That is not an incredible experience. This is your responsibility. This is your time. This is your ability to say, I'm going to create incredible experiences utilizing technology, utilizing the tools that have never been available to grow your business, to connect with people in your marketplace, in your market center, and to really just wow your audience. So let's recap, and I don't know if we're going to have time for Q&A, but I'll be around afterwards. So let me just recap this real quick. We care about them because they're the largest generation in U.S. history. They will change how we work, how we live, how we communicate, how our businesses run. The second thing is we want to be aware of the traits that dictate their emotions and how they relate to the world. And those 4 emotional triggers are work-life balance, they're collaborators, they're multicultural, and they're eco-sensitive. Start positioning yourself for them, and you're going to position yourself for the baby boomers as well. The third thing, or the 5th trait, is their communicative trait with technology, their technology dependence. Start utilizing that in your business. Create incredible experiences. Be the person who provides real valuable information, and you're going to thrive. Now, before we take Q&A, I do just want to let you know one more thing, is I have a book on this that I'm willing to send you guys for free. Just text me your email address, and I'll make sure that that gets sent out to you. There it is up there. If you have an iPhone, that's what it looks like. If you don't have an iPhone, buy one. Some of you are still on BlackBerry. I'm like, really? So buy an iPhone. Really, buy an iPhone. And that's what it looks like. Just text me your email address. Don't put anything else in there. Just your email address. We'll get that sent out to you the next day or so. One of my assistants will have that sent out to you. And it just talks more about this stuff in depth. So I really do encourage you to pick it up. Thank you guys so much. Really appreciate it.
We've got time for 2 questions. So if you have a question, I need you to get to the microphone. If not, we're going to move on. We really don't have the time for the 2 questions, but I'm going to go ahead and take it. We have one here and one there. That's it. Okay?
Awesome.
I just finished a transaction with the millennial generation. 98% of our conversation was text and email.
Yes.
We probably only spoke 3 times, and it was at the houses. How can I build a relationship, or is that building a relationship with a person of this generation?
Great question. That is actually building a relationship with them, and I will tell you that the generation past millennials is very much the same way. Our 11-year-old son, my gosh, his dependence on technology way beyond our generation's dependence on technology, and that is part of how they relate to you. And part of what's important to them is the speed of communication. How many phone calls have we gotten on where we go, hi, Mary, how you doing? How's the weather where you are? Isn't this beautiful how we're doing? And it drags on with all of this nonsense like we just talk about the stupidest things because we feel like we have to. And we feel like we're rude if we get on the phone and go, hey, I just have a quick question for you, and then I have to hop off the line. So they use speed of communication. They hate getting on the phone because they feel like what should take 30 seconds is going to take 30 minutes. So utilize text messaging to speed up the communication process, save yourself time, and engage with them and know that they view text communication very, very similarly to face-to-face communication. So it's a great question. Did that answer your question? Perfect.
On Wednesday, we went to Listing Legends, and we had a public panel. And one of the people on the public panel said, our industry really doesn't have accreditations or anything like that we can help people understand that we as a group, a CRS, are more experienced. And I really struggle with a really short, sweet, succinct way during a marketing consultation to let someone know that I'm a CRS and what that means to them. As a millennial, a public person, how would you impart that?
You know, great question. And let me just say this, is that if you just have a long list of letters after your name, we don't care. I'm just going to be straight up honest about that. We don't care unless we understand what they mean, and I think that they're right, is that there's not enough communication happening about what that means. And so what you want to do is when you're telling them about yourself and how you can help them, make it about them. Not about what you've done and all the education that you've had and all the experience that you have. Remember, every question at the back of everybody's mind is, what's in it for me? Why does this matter to me? So the question becomes, what does being a CRS mean to me as the client? How does that help me? It means that we have lower transaction costs. We speed up our transit. We know how to move your house faster. We know how to help you find your house faster. We reduce your headaches. We're more prepared, which means that your process is so much easier when you work with the CRS. Whatever that selling proposition is, use it. Tell them, because they're not going to necessarily ask, but that doesn't mean that they don't want to know. It just means that they don't want to feel dumb by asking a question that they feel like maybe I should know what CRS stands for. So just be upfront and honest. Use that as part of your selling points. Make sense? Just say it.
Aren't you glad you got up this morning? Dude. Thank you, guys. Thank you, brother.